based actress, and I'm also the host of a wonderful podcast. I'm biased, but Mentors on the Mic, where I interview accomplished mentors in different parts of the entertainment industry about how they started and how they moved up. So naturally, I just love talking to people, especially those in entertainment. So moderating panels like this is just so much fun for me. I'm especially grateful to be here for Imagine This Women's Film Festival, because I so believe in the mission of empowering female filmmakers. So thank you to Patrice and Susie and everyone at Imagine This for putting this wonderful festival together. It must not be the easiest thing to do in this type of condition and climate, and we're so many things to learn, but thank you guys for putting this together. And I wanted to give our wonderful filmmakers here a chance to introduce themselves and maybe a little bit about their film, just in case if anyone hasn't seen it or just needs a reminder. If you haven't seen it, check out these films. You have until October 4th. But Talia, do you want to start?
Oh, sure. Sorry, I wasn't sure if I was muted. Hi, everyone. My name is Talia. The film that I directed and wrote is called Chrysanthemum, and it was actually my senior thesis film for my graduation, so it's like my debut movie.
Yes. Amazing. Lucy?
Yeah, I'm Lucy Bellick, and I'm a Melbourne-based filmmaker. It's 6 a.m. here, and that's good. I have an infant son, so that's keeping me up anyway. Yeah. It's a pleasure to be here. And yeah, so my film Domicide is a psychodrama set in the kind of coastal area of Victoria, the state I live in. I co-wrote it with my husband Jesse, and I directed it. And it's kind of about a really narcissistic relationship, husband and wife relationship, and shit gets real over a weekend, I think. Yeah.
Yes, for sure. I was like, I'm on mute. No one can hear me respond to that. Wonderful. And then Mandy, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah. So I made Unnatural. It was the first time I've made a film. I wrote it and starred in it and was one of the producers. It's about a woman whose path is very different than how she envisioned it, and how to make that okay without a fairy tale ending. How can just someone who, has to go on without that child or without that, fairy tale prince or whatever, how do they have a happy ending? And how do they make what they have? How can they turn that love kind of towards themselves as opposed to reliant on those other outside sources? Just very much wanted to share about that topic, the topic of female infertility, and how there's a lot of shame around it and people don't talk about it, and I just wanted to kind of blow up that conversation. So, and it was written from a personal perspective, though I have 2 young children, so I feel I had to get over that imposter syndrome when I was making it, because I felt like, well, this isn't me exactly, but that's okay. So yeah.
Unmute. I should probably just stop unmuting myself. Great. And that really takes us into my first question, which was, what was the impetus or inspiration for the idea of the film? So I feel like we could start with Mandy, because you kind of just started a little bit already, but what exactly was this inspiration? What was the idea behind it?
Yeah, so it was very much about my personal struggle and feeling that shame, that like inability to speak about it with others, and not understanding why, and it just being so much worse because I couldn't share it with other people. That idea of, when you're trying, you don't tell people when you're trying to conceive. And there's good reasons for that for some people. Some people don't want to talk about it, and that's fine too. But I think that there's a lot of people who do want to talk about it and do want to share it, and there's just so much shame around it. And it was such a horrible, all-consuming struggle. And I just wanted to share it. And I just felt, I have friends who don't have kids, who tried to have kids, and I just wanted this. It may seem incredibly naive, but I wanted to somehow make them feel better with this attempt to be like, look, you guys can be a happy ending too. Let's make a film where there's a happy ending about a single woman who doesn't get all those things that we get in Hollywood, and and celebrate them. celebrate you guys. And so that's, like I said, somewhat naive, but that was my goal.
Yeah. No, I think that was super, like, definitely achieved. There's so many moments that come in. We're going to talk about it, I think, during the panel for sure. But just the moment, especially at the end, when, you know, your character speaks to that friend, that old friend, and they're like, I want to show you the picture of the twins. And you're like, I am not there yet. I'm not. And then you're like, okay, but back to, and I feel like that's a struggle that, I mean, you know, that we'll see, that we saw kind of throughout, but that was just so strong. Lucy, what about yourself? How did that inspiration for the story, you know, come about?
Yeah, sure. Well, there's autobiographical aspects to it for sure.
Yeah.
Just insofar as relationships I've had with people that have been, you know, toxic or dysfunctional,
Yeah.
and they can happen in all sorts of realms of life, as we know.
Yeah.
And so I kind of transposed that onto Molly and Pete in the film, the characters in the film, but also in my own experience of healing from complex trauma. I had this globus, which is where it's kind of an anxiety located in your throat. So it may sound strange, but you know, you often feel like a constricting in your throat. This kind of became at a time like a concern of mine. And through psychotherapy, kind of I unpacked that a lot of this is about like honoring and feeling feelings. And if you don't do that, they kind of need to be respected because they're going to come up. They're just feelings are feelings. They don't end. And they need, you know, they demand respect in a way. So I was keen to explore that, like what happens when you don't feel your feelings, when you push it down, it has to come up, especially if you're in a toxic relationship. So I was kind of, you know, and I kind of went, right, let's get reasonably melodramatic with it. It's, you know, let's really like stretch it out in the 16 minutes and change that I have, you know, to do that. And so that was the impetus. So autobiographical aspects on steroids, so to speak.
And I really don't know much about chakras, but I feel like, I mean, isn't that like a communication chakra anyway, right? Yeah, it's to the throat. So it's almost this lack of communication ends up in like a voice constriction. So I felt that when she was talking about her glands, I was like, I think you know, it's that I really felt that lack of communication not being able to come out almost.
Wild. I didn't know that was
yeah, I don't know much about it, but everything I have heard about chakras, I don't know if anyone else here is more of a chakra expert, but the ones I've heard, it's like, this is all about communication. So there's like a strictness, it's almost like it constricts when there's a lack thereof. Yeah.
Very cool.
But anyway, we'll talk more about, I love all three of your films, by the way, but you'll hear more and more about that. And Celia?
So the idea of Chrysanthemum really comes from my hobby of people watching and just trying to imagine what someone's life is like, since it's a film that doesn't really have to do with my personal experience. I was just touched by the neighborhood and the people of New York, and I wanted to make a film that kind of resonated with different types of people. But like also New Yorkers as well, or just anyone in like a big metropolitan city. So I think that was basically the inspiration. And then I just kind of, this idea of this person that I would see, I would just imagine like a scenario, like when she would go home, like, well, what's that like? Like, is she married? Like, does she have a job, or does she have children? And so just kind of imagining and taking it from there and making a story out of it.
Yeah. What kind of research, Leah, did you have to do for that particular, you know, storytelling that you did? Because, you know, you think about like the first couple images really stick out to me. You know, you start off with her, you know, sort of at some sort of altar, right? And so this idea of tradition and prayer, and she's praying and she has this chrysanthemum. You see all the chrysanthemums above, which is so beautiful. And then it goes right to the busy urban street of New York City. Mm-hmm. So how did you, what was just like, that was so beautiful. I just wanted to mention, but also just this idea of what kind of research do you have to do to create that authenticity that comes from that type of story?
Yes, thank you. And so, I mean, it really started with just me talking with friends who like are Chinese, just looking at funeral like videos on YouTube and just really researching and going on Google and really doing your homework, and obviously interviewing my friends, peers, and then the actors themselves. Like once I got some people interested in the movie, they actually told me, oh, like we would actually do it this way, or so it was really a collaborative effort, and I'm really thankful that people have trusted me to make this movie, and like in a way that's not insulting, and the whole thing was like very collaborative, and I'm really happy that I had support.
That's so nice. I mean, I've thought a lot about this, especially because, right now, I don't know if you guys have heard, there's an article written, or there was a couple articles about Ron Howard just took on this film. I don't know if you guys seen this, but he took on this film. Ron Howard's amazing. And it's called Lang Lang. It's the memoir of this Chinese pianist. And the Chinese pianist himself said, I'm so grateful for Ron Howard taking on this film. This is a dream come true. And then on the flip side, as there is with everything, these days, there's also the other side that's saying, well, shouldn't it be told by this authentic filmmaker or storyteller? It doesn't have to be a Chinese director, but how much collaboration are you supposed to have? And Celia, because you've done such a good job of sort of telling a story that's not, yours, but that comes from you. Obviously, you imagined the story, which I think is so beautiful. What do you think about that sort of discussion right now?
I mean, it's definitely a discussion that I think is worth having, and I was actually waiting for people to be like, oh, well, you're not Chinese, like, why are you telling this story? Yeah. And really, I just think it comes from admiration, and again, people watching, and I honestly don't really think something from my life is that inspirational, I guess. Like, I mean, I haven't really lived through like, a lot, but no, I just, that's what I do all day. I just meet someone, and I just imagine like what what it's like, and maybe it's not cinematic per se, but we're all
exactly, and I feel like we're all storytellers, and so that's what you're doing. You're telling this beautiful story, and there is something to be said about trying to shed light on stories that are not your own too. That's that's important. And so I think it's just this interesting discussion going back and forth. And I mean, I get it a lot as an actor as well. So I was just on one hand, it's like it's so beautiful watching what you did, and the fact that you did have all this collaboration with other people. I just think is so nice. So I just wanted to bring that up just in case people talk about that and ask about that. So I'll go on to another one. Let's say with Shayna for Unnatural. Well, not for Mandy. How did you get Shayna on board, and how did you get? I know she's part of this production team, and there's an actor on the production team that was in it. He played the guy that you're trying to get the listing from. So how did you get that team together?
Yeah, so we all have an improvising background. Chris and I met at the People's Improv Theater. We did improv together for a while. I've known him for many, many years. And Shayna, I met through the same theater. Her husband was a performer there, and so he had introduced me to her many, many years ago. And she's someone who I wanted to do it from the beginning for a couple reasons, mainly because I just love her aesthetic, and I really, I think she has just a very unique eye, and I think that she has a very clear voice, and I think it's something you can identify when you see her work, and I just love, I love her aesthetic, and I had this script that she doesn't do a lot of scripted material. She does a lot of improvised material, and the mood of the shoot was very much like off script. Let's play with let's do some scenes where we're just playing in as much time as we could afford, which we didn't have much, but we tried to play where we could, and so that was definitely the vibe going in, and I definitely wanted some people who had that improv background. And Chris is also someone I thought of from actually my husband suggested him. My husband is in he would love to be here right now. He was a producer as well, and he was the homeless guy who's at the apartment I'm showing at the beginning. He's taking care of the kids right now, so of our kids, so he can't be here. One of us had to do it, and we're like, well, I guess I should. And so I made sure Shayna. I was like, I just kept I just kept needling away until she gave in. She's like, I don't really do scripted material, but she was helping me a lot with the script anyway. So I was just like, come on, you just got to do this with me, you know. And I eventually wore her down. And then I got pregnant, which is ironic to start.
I saw in that because in the Seed and Spark campaign that you were talking about, one of the updates is I have to postpone filming because ironically I got pregnant.
Yes, yeah. And I was very, very sick for 8 months. And so I had to make the hard decision of postponing for a year. And I was like, Shayna, please, I need to make sure you're available next year, you know, or like whenever, and at that time it seemed like everything was over and it was never going to happen. And luckily, it all worked out for the best, honestly.
That's great. Can you tell us about like an improv part in it that made it to the film?
Yeah, I mean, everything, like the scene in the beginning with my husband and I, we kept doing that over and over again, and just said whatever. He's such a funny improviser. I had a really hard time keeping a straight face that whole time. We're lucky we got to take it all because I was just laughing so much. And then, really like every aspect of any scenes where there's speaking involved, there's some play there. It's rarely exactly what was on the paper. Also, we had to change the ending, which was, again, something that happened in the moment that I thought was a disaster, and it really is still disappointing. But on the second day, we just ran out of time. So we had to figure out how we're going to shoot the ending and add it to the third day of shooting, which, you know, being in the lead and then also having all those production jobs or producer jobs, I was like, oh, okay, well, I've got to go home and we'll figure it out, and we'll be emailing at 11 p.m. and, you know, and I've got to get the costumes ready for the next day. So it was just a lot. And I think the ending turned out well. It's not as powerful as I think the ending was going to have the same tone. It was never going to be a different tone.
Can you tell us what the ending was supposed to be, more or less?
Yeah, so it was going to be, the beginning was, I was actually supposed to be getting onto a train that I was trying to get onto a train. It was more like right where the doors are shutting. I was supposed to be getting on a train, the doors shut at the last second, and there's like and when I make the feature and I have a gazillion dollars, the car's going to be filled with pregnant women just like laughing and going into labor, and I'm going to be like stuck on the platform. And then at the end, it mirrors it because I'm on the subway and a mother with like one child is trying to get on the train. And I stop the doors and I let her on, and they sit kind of across from me. And it's one of those kind of really outgoing kids who is sitting with her, and she looks at me and smiles, and I quickly look away, and then I decide to look back and smile at her. And that was going to be the ending. So similar vibe, right? Like, yeah. I'm working on this. Again, in the feature, we'll do that in the future, yes, which is my goal. So.
Oh, awesome. Wow. Okay. Yeah. It's because I really, like I said, I loved that moment between you and your friend, but I can see that also being super powerful.
JB, the actress for that, is also, has an improv heavy background. And we had a lot of fun in that scene too. And a lot of it was just working it out right there because we didn't have one, we didn't have an ending. That was a scene originally, but it wasn't going to be the ending until we were just like, well, we've got to truncate it.
Yeah. So we talked a little bit about Mandy's collaboration process and Celia's collaboration process. So how about Lucy? Because I know your husband wrote it with you and also was in it, right? So he was the doctor. So how was that? How was working with your partner on that?
All over it. So we have a production company, my husband and I, On Rye Productions. And I'm really lucky that we have this we started off as best mates, and we were writing together, applying for things, applying for some grant we never got. So that's how, and then we kind of started working together, and then, things moved from there. So we've worked together in the past, and we're friends. And so I'm really lucky that we have like an easy back and forth writing relationship and producing relationship where we because we both have acting backgrounds. I mean, I've been working acting since I was a little girl, and Jessie, went to posh drama school in England, did the whole thing. And so we kind of like act or improv, I suppose, a bit like Mandy's story, improv back and forth. That really helps us with the script writing stuff. We don't act in the living room, but we improv, we spitball ideas. And then from there, we kind of develop this. And then, yeah, he's a joy to direct. I mean, it's like the easiest thing in the world. Casting was exceptional, if I don't say so myself. No, we had a wonderful cast, my husband included, and two beautiful Australian actors, Kat Stewart and Justin Hosking. And I've worked with Kat before on a TV show here in Australia, and she's just wonderful, just a freak talent, and just extraordinarily easygoing. Like we pulled this together with many resources and limited resources we had, and everyone was so professional, such troopers about this. If you hear squawking in the background, that's my son. I might need to feed him, but you will hear it. Don't worry. But yeah, so that was kind of, and then it emerged pretty quickly, and like it did and it didn't. It's a while ago now, but it's very easy back and forth in terms of writing. And then on set, it was just like, I mean, I directed it, but the acting, like when you cast it well, it's like they come ready,
Yeah.
But also I totally subscribe to Mandy's, like ethos of improv and letting actors play. And I'm a big Meisner director and actor, so listening and responding is everything for me. So just trying to create space where the actors can do that. And I'm not so precious with the script. I mean, I'm proud of what we wrote, but I always want room for the actors to do what they want to do. It's like it's the kind of my husband and I always talk about stolen moments, these kind of stolen moments that for me, I love in the cut, which is these things that you don't anticipate happening, but the camera's rolling, and that's always the actor. So we love actors. We also run workshops for actors. We just adore them. Oh. And so we just want to let the actor do their thing, you know what I mean? Give them space and hold space for them to listen and respond and see what happens. And fortunately, like that, I was able to wrangle that and be present for that.
Yeah. Love it. Well, that actually takes me really into my next question, because all of you guys, like I said, had a lot of hats, right? You're, producer, director, writers, and so I wanted to talk a little bit about that process that comes from creating a film, which you guys, I'm sure, can attest to, which is that the script that you write, that you start off with, is always different than the script that you film on the, like the week of shooting or whatever, or the days in your case. And then the posts, like what happens in the editing process and creating that different film from that and what it becomes. So Celia, can you speak a little bit to that, like evolution of like how you, like what you started with? You talked a little bit about the idea, but how that came into, a script, and then how did that change from filmmaking, and then how did that change in the editing?
Yeah. So I originally, the movie was only 5 pages, and I was like super happy, as I'm like, oh, it's so short, there's like no talking at all. And totally it changed because like Mandy and Lucy were saying, like I really wanted my actors to improv or like, take it wherever they wanted it to, especially since it was a foreign language. And I can't really write a scenario that I'm not accustomed to, so I wanted them to just play around. And then I added 2 scenes, or kind of like erased one and kind of like lumped some of the scenes together. And I didn't think the film would be as long as it is in the end, because I just, actually it was longer, but I had such a hard time cutting it because I just loved how natural they were in the space, or like just how it would breathe, or how much space there was. It was difficult, cutting it up, especially since it is my first film, and I'm like, oh, but like this moment is so beautiful. And there was one point where a friend of mine who's an editor and a director, he's just like, no one will care about this except you. Like, this is not a story, like you have to get rid of it. And I'm like, okay, can there be a director's cut? And he's like, no. But yeah, I'm happy with what we have for the film, but it was a process, especially in post, just cutting so much out of it that I wanted to keep, but that's life.
What part did you find that you felt like you could cut the most? Because was it more towards like the beginning, middle, or is it that turn in the end when, they're dancing together and they're having that moment that's really sweet? Was it more of that part, or was it more of the like top half?
It was more of the top half, just like the character introductions. And Actually, the scene where she's asleep and you kind of hear Chen, the husband, in the background leaving, it was like
Yeah.
a process of like him crossing the screen a few times and like, just to show how separate they are. Like they don't say good morning, they don't sleep in the same room, like
Yeah.
separated, and they have their own routines. And yeah, I think that was like the main part where I was like, no, do we have to? Like, and they're like, yes.
Well, I mean, I obviously don't know what scenes were cut, but I thought it was so beautifully put together. And Lucy, did you want to talk a little bit about the evolution of your process?
Yeah. So that's a very good question. Like shooting scripts are always different, aren't
Yeah.
they? Like they just kind of are. And I suppose we stuck pretty close to, we didn't. Like there were so many drafts. And I always feel like there's half drafts. There's like 0.5 drafts. It's like a draft and a half. Who's got that one? Like just, have I sent that off? Like you kind of get, like you drown in drafts. What we got onto set with, pretty much ended up in the film. That said, there's so many moments that like the actors just did beautiful things that, made the cut, obviously. After we'd shot it, we kind of were doing a bit of editing in Melbourne, but our picture editor, Josh, he's in London. And so part of our honeymoon, we went to cut some of the film. And that was amazing. He's a wonderful editor, just to see it put together. And I was listening to a podcast and they talked about how Milos Forman says that the film's made in the casting and the edit, and how everything in between in terms of production is just like getting little bits. And I thought I love that. And that, in retrospect, I can see that I'm not in any way comparing myself to Milos Forman, but I've just in no way. I just mean I can totally, the edit really. It was amazing just to see, because you got all those stolen moments I talked about, and suddenly they're in the cut and it changes the tone, and so that was really special. And yeah, so it was that kind of ran the spectrum of, but also it was my first film that I directed, so like starting to step into my own as a director and a writer felt really, really empowering on set. And also we were kind of doing everything. We were also catering, like we were just running around like headless chooks. But yeah, it was a pretty exciting, 4 days, I think.
Oh yeah, I was gonna ask. So 4 or 5 days. That's in total. Mandy, you said 3. Celia, how long was your shooting schedule?
It was originally supposed to be 3 days, but we forgot a very important prop in the exterior scene, so it ended up being 4 days.
The doll? Was it the doll?
Oh no! Oh my God, no!
Oh. I was like, what if that was forgotten? Awesome. And then Mandy, can you tell us a little bit about the evolution of yours?
The evolution of mine. So I guess I kind of touched on this a little bit.
A little bit, yeah.
How we had to change it, and in the midst of it, it definitely started out like 40 pages. Because I have the feature in my head, and I have it in one of the million drafts, the AD drafts, which I don't even know. Because those were after the reading. Yeah, I did a reading, and then I was like, how do I like these few drafts? The drafts got ridiculous. So it was, and I wanted to say, I think, having talked a little bit about the process, it started out so large, and then I was like, oh, it has to be short. And then you do all that research, and it's like, oh, film festivals like it if they're 10 minutes long. And it's like, how can I wrap this up in 10 minutes? And I totally feel for what Celia said about, what's that phrase? You have to release your darlings, or you cut your darlings, or something, like those things that are really, Lucy, you got it?
Yeah, kill your darlings.
Kill your darlings, yeah.
Yeah.
I get that feeling. I didn't edit it, luckily. If I had done if like somebody suggested me directing it, I was like, I can't possibly. But the editor or the director is married to the editor, and they edit and direct. So it was like a team, which was part of the reason why I also wanted to work with Shayna, is because her husband is an editor. She's a director. They have a camera guy they work with all the time. They have sound people. They just have a crew. And since I was coming at it with like all this naivete, I was so glad to have all that experience going into it. I did realize, having made this, that there is like this element of magic that is there or it's not, and I don't know how to put it there. I don't think anybody does, because we wouldn't have all these like really talented people who sometimes they make kind of not that great products, projects, and I think that you can't always predict if things are going to come together a certain way, because I really feel like I just had it was just released into the air, and we'll see what happens, at a certain point.
How much say, just curious, did you have with like the final product? Because obviously, you have Shayna, the director, her husband is editing it. Did they just send you drafts essentially, or did you work with them closely on that?
They sent us what their take on an edited version. And I was blown away. I absolutely loved it. I was so excited. And then my husband went through the footage, because there were some things because he was there for all the scenes, and he went through the footage and thought, well, I thought there was a really good moment here, and I thought there was a really good moment here. So he went through the footage, and then we said, what about this shot for that? And kind of went through one by one. But anytime we kind of deferred to them a lot. So I'd be like, well, did you think this shot was better? Why? And then, oh, okay, well, that makes sense. So let's keep it. Or actually, I really preferred this one. So it was just like a give and take. It was a really good working relationship.
Yeah, it sounds like a really good, like, cohesive collaboration there between all parties. That's great. Cool. So normally I don't ask about titles for films, just because there's so much to unpack, but I felt like all three of you had these like one word, titles, and I really wanted to touch base on that a little bit. So for example, we have Lucy. So let's start with Lucy. We have Domicide, which I had to look up and I have somewhere here, because I didn't know what domicide means. So looking it up, it means the planned deliberate destruction of someone's home causing suffering to the dweller. So as soon as I learned that, I was like, what a name. So how did you get right? So how did you get to that name?
How did we get to that name? My husband's loitering. I should ask him. No, we will definitely, right. No, definitely it was about just this idea that, well, killing your dwellings. This idea it was like a double thing happening here. The first one was that, well, I'll get back to the how did we come to it. But the meaning behind it was certainly that certainly it's this house where there's this kind of destruction is happening, right? This interpersonal destruction and destruction emotionally, psychically, in terms of how they communicate, as you talked about the chakra before. So there's that kind of destruction happening. And also this idea that you can't destroy your feelings. Like, you just can't. They have to be honored. They almost refuse to be destroyed. So you'll destroy yourself before you'll destroy them, in a way. You'll kind of do everything you can to suppress who you are, how you feel, where you are in the world, in order to present in a certain way, perhaps. But ultimately your feelings, they won't be silenced. So we're playing with this idea of destruction of self and destruction of the relationship. And in terms of kill your dwelling, I think we were just playing around with that, and we were thinking of like, asides, like, that's homicide and other sides, and that kind of. Then we came across this word, and we thought, that's just about says it, and it sounds scary a little bit.
A little bit, yeah. Because in my head, I right away thought domicile for some reason, and then I changed. I was like, oh, it's not that. And then just watching it all happen. Then when I looked it up, I was like, that is so perfectly like one. What the film is, which is almost this like constriction of just everything into like one story or one moment, and then you have this word, and it feels like everything is sort of being constricted into that one word. And that was my experience with it.
So eloquent and beautiful. Thank you.
Thanks. It didn't feel as eloquent as I said it, so I appreciate the feedback.
Absolutely, it sounded gorgeous. Thank you. That's very kind.
Thanks. And then Mandy, how about yourself?
So for me, it just sums up how it felt not being able to do the job that you're supposed to do as a woman, like the ultimate job, as a is to become a mother, right? I think a lot of women feel that way and want that. So I just felt when I was going through, all the treatments, that I was just wrong. I was just not right. I wasn't put together right. Just unnatural. I felt weird, and I'm not. The thing I was put here to do, I can't do. Like, what's the point of me? You know, so and I thought so titles are so hard. They're so hard. You
They
can just
are,
go.
which is why I normally don't ask about them, but I just felt like, you know, go on. Sorry.
I'm glad you did, because it is an interesting question. Like, it's kind of like bands. You know, you hear a band and you're like, well, do you like them because of their name? No, you don't like them because of their name. You like them because of what the music they play. You know, and there's some bands that I like that if they didn't make good music, I think their name was terrible. You know, so it is everything and it's nothing. Unnatural seemed like a horror film, and I think there is a horror film called Unnatural. But so this is the comedy.
Well, it's great because even the moment of, can you guys hear me okay? Because I had to take my AirPods off. So
You're a little quieter, I think.
A little quieter. Okay, I'll try to be a little louder until the AirPods charge up again. But with Unnatural, you had the doctor kind of come close to the screen, and all you saw were the lips saying unnatural, and I was like,
Yeah.
Oh, that makes so much. You know what I mean? There was like something very significant about hearing that.
Yeah, that was definitely what you hear or what I heard, you know, and nothing else mattered except that I was wrong, and that was like a very, you know, not that a doctor would say like, that. I mean, if a doctor ever said that in that way, like I hope that doesn't ever happen or that has never happened, but that's what it felt like, you know. So.
Yeah, and Celia, Chrysanthemum.
I mean, how did I come up with a name? I don't know. It just kind of, I mean, so as I was doing my research, chrysanthemums are the Chinese flower of mourning. So I just think that because she was mourning the death of her child, and it was something that she had to live with every day, and it was kind of like a cycle that she was stuck where she would replace the flower and like hang the dying ones and kind of do that and do the whole ritual. Yeah, I think that the name just kind of came with the story.
Yeah, I love that. Great. Well, so I wanted to also give you guys time. I wanted to hear a little bit about like, well, there's two things. So I'll start with the first thing. So the one I wanted to hear about was because each of you guys had a very central female role, which, you know, doesn't always happen. And I think is always so wonderful to see the complexity of what comes with this woman and what she's going through and how she's handling life. And granted, there's other very central characters in all three of yours, and that adds so much to the story. But how did you guys, you know, develop this central female role in each of your films? I guess we'll start with Mandy. I'm trying to change it up in terms of order.
So I mean, part of it is what I said. It was my personal journey. I'm an actress, and I was creating a vehicle for myself. That seems really trite to say, but I don't know why. You know, it's like if no one's going to make a project that showcases my ability, then I'm going to do it. You know, so that's what I felt like I needed to do. And I'm not a comedian, and I'm not a dramatic actress. I do all of it. I always have, and a lot of casting directors and agents, they pigeonhole, and which I get. They just want to, they want to just, you know, knock it out of the park, get the right answer, and not have any room for, you know, the blurry lines or whatever. But if you're someone who's in between, I think it's challenging to make sure that your voice is heard too, and you showcase your stuff. So I had a writing coach who was fantastic, and because I had my son, and I was like, I have to have a writing. Oddly, after I had my son, I was like, I'm going to dive into my acting career, as opposed to being like, I'm going to buckle down and earn money. I was like, I'm going to pursue the arts even harder, which is not what I was expecting. And I was like, I need a writing coach to figure out what I'm going to do. And then I you know, really felt so passionately about this idea. And in the feature, it's going to zero more in on the relationship between her and this friend. I lost a very good friend who didn't have a child, because of the children. And so that would be more of a central theme in the feature length, I think. But I was like, okay, well, I'm going to focus on this idea, and then and we eventually we got there a little later than we expected, but so it just made sense from the beginning that it would be me.
No, I love that. I'm glad it was you. And Celia, what about you? I mean, you have this really complex female role who obviously is very close with her husband, you know, and you could tell that there was that history there, and then it's hopefully, you know, there's that moment at the end. But how did you sort of create her journey and develop that roller coaster of emotions?
I really don't even know. It kind of just came with me imagining what it would be like. So when I was kind of creating Ming and like people watching, I just imagined that, like, what if she found something, like what if this woman Canning found something that like really made her happy, and then it kind of was, and then just like, okay, but why would it make her happy? And then, what is she looking for? Like, obviously, like she's out there canning, but I feel like looking for something like lost treasures or, something to reclaim. And I just felt like the most like tender thing that, somebody could lose as a child, especially if you're a mother, you're carrying something for 9 months and you have an intimate connection right away. I mean, I don't have children, but I can kind of, imagine what it's like, and like something that's like irreplaceable almost. And it just kind of went from there, and then how she was kind of stuck, and then how the world just kept going, especially including her husband. He kind of moved on in his own way. So it's just like trying to have the world understand like what it means to, be stuck on something, and maybe it's not the ultimate replacement, but it's something to make her happy. Or yeah.
No, I love that because especially I feel like for both Unnatural and Chrysanthemum, there's this element of like what society wants you to do, like what people want you to do. In your case, they wanted her to move on almost. Like you felt that husband being like, move on in this case, or get over it, or I've made my peace with this. I don't understand why you need to carry around this doll. So it's almost like this like invisible sort of character there for both of your films in that regard, and a little bit also with Domicide. I feel like, right? There's this element of like what society wants from this couple. This doctor coming and being like, "Oh, I know you. You're a fantastic actress," and almost imparting what he wants from them too. And then it's so different behind closed doors and sometimes in front of people. But what about yourself? I mean, how did you develop this female character and her journey? And I just love that we're celebrating this. This is not, the fact that we have so many female characters to talk about.
Yeah, it's very exciting. And yeah, to your point as well, Pete wanted Molly to move on. Just don't be unwell. Right. In his mind, as well. It's like just be a normal, whatever the fuck that is, normal person. And so certainly I identify with Molly's story insofar as like my own experience, kind of like a somatic experience of trauma, or what might be anxiety, but under that is feelings that aren't being felt. And I acutely remember when this happened to me, I was on stage doing a play, and it was Shakespeare of all things, and it was in like the first act. And I remember being like, we're on tour with this play, and I remember being like, my throat, which is like such a full-on, I'm talking to actors, so it's like I suddenly became, it's bizarre, it's like I became focused on my throat, and it's really, really scary when that happens, because it's like it's almost like a panic attack, like you don't know what's going on, right? And then it's like happening to you. And I remember being terrified and going into the wings after I that fit and being like, what the fuck's going on? But that led me into therapy, which began to unpack where this was coming from, which is just the best thing in the world. And I'm the biggest advocate for, not just from the point of view of, right? Not just from the point of view of, as an artist, being able to mind stuff. Obviously, it's just like, in order to be a free person, like you have to be in a good way up here in order to do anything, and just be well, right? So my husband and I are massive proponents for mental health, and that finds its way into our work. But so I definitely identified with Molly, but like I said before, I kind of put her story on steroids. And what if I put narcissistic dynamics I'd been in. Almost I'd been in relationships with narcissistic people or had those interactions. How could I transpose that into a married couple? And what if where that can stretched it out, but also condensed it in over a weekend? And so things coming to a head. So I identified with Molly, and also I wrote with this particular actor in mind. And so, but a lot of it is, you know, influenced by life, like things I've heard, things people have said to me, my own experience of panic around things. So I just kind of wrote what I knew, which is a cliche, isn't it? But in this case, yeah, that's kind of what happened.
All right, guys, I want to just wrap this up quickly and asking, one, how can we find you? How can we support you? How can we, you know, help you on this journey, do what we can to follow you on different stuff? So Celia, can we start with you? How do we support you?
Sure. Well, I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. My Instagram handle is _thedrawingchild. And I mean, I'm writing a short right now. I'm working on a feature that kind of speaks to my heritage, and pretty much it's more or less my parents' story and like what it meant to be born in the 60s and 70s in America and migrating from the South to the North. So like that's a whole like feature I want to write, and hopefully I get to make it. But yeah, I mean, I don't know.
That's amazing. No, I can't wait to see that. And Lucy, how about you? How can we support you?
Yeah, thank you. What a lovely question. So On Rye Productions is our production company. There's a website and things. And also on Instagram, I think our handle is On Rye Productions, at On Rye Productions. Just, yeah. Yeah, I think so. And yeah, and so we're in the midst of making things. We have a couple more shorts in the edit at the moment, and a longer form short that we were shooting, but then COVID put that on hold. So we're going to, hopefully, Australia's doing well at this point, trying to get things back on track. So hopefully we'll be in production at some stage soon. And then, yeah, other things in development. So making work. Yeah.
Excellent. Amazing. And Mandy?
Thank you for asking. And can you guys put your handles in the chat, just because I didn't quite catch the I didn't quite catch them. I want to make sure I follow you guys. And I also wanted to say I really loved both of your films. I thought they were fabulous. So, and all the films in the block I really enjoyed. I can be followed on Twitter. It's all at Mandy Schmieder. Twitter, Instagram. I'm on YouTube. And what else? I mean, I also, you can follow Unnatural Film Comedy on Instagram. It's just at Unnatural Film Comedy. Like I said, I want to make this a feature. It's my husband's turn to do something, so we're gonna make his short film, which is a comedy about a bad Elvis impersonator. And then I'm gonna get some kind of preserving makeup so that in 5 years or however long it is, I'll be able to play a 41-ish woman on in the feature of this film. So yeah.
Well, guys, yeah, thank you so much. I'm so glad. I'm going to follow all of you guys. I hope other people follow these wonderful, you know, filmmakers. And thank you guys so much. This has been so lovely, just getting to know you guys and getting to learn more about the film. So thank you.
Thank you.